und Weißbeindein. And hello GameMakers, this is GameMaker Rob, and today we will be doing the battling of the multiple slimes. That's ridiculous. Respect, man. This is GameMaker Rob's, and today's we doing the multiple slimes, innit, man? Respect. Let's do the jumping, man. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? Safe. So as per usual, we are going to add something into our OBJ init create event. First of all, we're inside the battle region, and I've added a new region here called monster spawn array and targeting. And inside this region, this new region, we have a new enumerator. It's going to hold the all these variables are for are what type of monster do we want to spawn, and how many in that particular group do we want to spawn, and what's the chance of these monsters spawning at all. So for monster type 1, you're always going to want the chance to spawn to be 100, otherwise there may be no battle at all. So always make that 100 like this for type 1. If we look at type 2, chance to spawn for this array entry here is 50%. So there's only a 50% chance that these green slimes are going to spawn in a battle with a global spawn 1. But for this first entry, I decided to add up to 3 groups, and I've made the chance for all 3 groups to be 100%. And you can add as many entries to this as you want. I've got a for loop inside the battle spawner that will check for as many entries as you have here. It will check for monsters to spawn, so you can have like 4, 5, 6 different groups if you could display that many. I decided 3 was a decent amount, but if you do add more to this enumerator, make sure you have a monster type, a maxing group, and a chance to spawn. You don't have to have an entry for every enumerator in these arrays. That's why this one is really small, because all we're interested in is spawning the Demon King. So he's not going to have any extra enemies with him. It's just going to be the Demon King. This spawn here has 2 groups, and this one has 3 groups, because the for loop I've got will just check the length of this array. So it'll go 9 entries here, and 6 here, and 3 here. So yeah, don't worry about having different sized entries. And last of all, we're not really using this that much today. We're just going to reference it one time because we still have to complete some of the other things in the multiple heroes, multiple monster battles. But for today's episode, we're going to introduce the enumerator. All monsters is going to target all the monsters. Single monster, just one of them. And the same for heroes as well. Okay, so now let's add a few variables inside the create event of battle spawner. So we're going to have 3 new lists. DS monsters is going to hold all the monsters IDs when they are created at the start of the battle, and as the monsters die, their ID will get removed from this list. When this list size equals 0, that's when the battle is going to end in a victory for the player. DS targets, this is going to hold whoever is going to be attacked. So it could be the player, it could be one of the monsters. In future episodes, it can hold multiple IDs. So you might want to cast a spell on all of the monsters, or you might want to heal all of the heroes. But for now, it's just going to hold 1 ID. DS actors, this is going to hold all the heroes or all the monsters. And as each hero or monster takes their turn, the list is going to dwindle down, and when the list size gets to 0, it's going to change turn. So say for example it was the player's turn, it would then become the monster's turn, and vice versa. Option state, we're just initializing it here so that we can display the state of option state without having to worry about whether we have initialized it or not, basically stopping a crash. Global.battle animation, this is going to be set to true whenever the slimes are being hit, whether they're attacking or whether they are dying. This serves basically to make sure that we're not trying to use an ID of a slime that's been destroyed, because when they die, their instance is going to be destroyed. Also, inside of the slimes, if their hit point gets reduced to 0, then they're going to get removed from all 3 of these lists. That's how we're going to do it. And while we're on the topic of monsters, we will sort out that object now. One thing that I needed to do, that I haven't actually done yet on this version, is to reduce the size of the sprites. So I'm going to do it here, change it from 160 to 80, and the same for the blue slime. I'm going to leave the Demon Lord the same size because he will just appear bigger, and that's cooler for a boss. And also for sprites, I've got a target arrow. This is going to appear over whatever monster the player is trying to kill, and the origin point is in the bottom center, so down here, which is the same place that I have the origin point for my monsters, so down there somewhere. Okay, so inside, where are we? OBJ monster. Crazy event hasn't changed. Step event. So I've added global.battle animation is true inside every animation. This is being set to true every step. It's not efficient, but I don't really see it as a big problem. It's not a big deal to me. I'd rather have it here where it's easier to find rather than setting it inside Battle Spawner. And then when the animation is over, we are setting it to false. Same here, setting it to true and again to false. And then this little block of code here is basically checking to see whether there are any monsters left. So for example, if the size of the S monsters is 0, then they're all dead. So we're going to set the option state and victory state to battle over and player 1 respectively for Battle Spawner, as well as setting the message here. So whichever monster is the last to die is going to be setting this basically, and then we just destroy the instance. Now we're inside the run death animation region, by the way. And then this is the hit animation. Again, we're setting battle animation to true and setting it to false here. And then if our hit point is less than 0, then we're going to do all this. So we're going to remove, well, let me start from the start. So we're going to run the death animation. So you'll see the slime getting hit, and then immediately after he finishes that animation, he's going to do the death animation. We set battle animation to true. We're also going to have 2 new variables called total XP value and total gold value inside Battle Spawner. Go ahead and type these 2 lines for now. We're going to initialize them inside Battle Spawner shortly. XP value, gold value, those get set within inside Battle Spawner. It's just however much XP and gold the monster is worth. We're also moving the quest manager, because previously we only had 1 monster, so we just did a check for the quest manager at the end of the battle. Whatever monster it was, just check to see if there's a quest for it. But now that we have multiple monsters, we need to do it on a per monster basis, so we might as well do it in the death animation. Excuse me. Or when the when the monster has less than 0 hit points, we're going to run this. So if there's like 10 slimes to kill and we killed 3 of them during the battle, then there's only going to be 7 left afterwards. And then we have to remove the ID of the monster from any of these 3 lists the ones that we made, targets, actors, monsters, just so we don't have any errors, because we might try and call the ID and it doesn't exist anymore. And last of all, inside shake animation, we are setting battle animation to true, and here set it to false. And finally, we're going to go into the draw GUI event for the monster. XX is now going to be equal to the monster's X, because we are going to set that from inside the step event of the battle spawn object. After all the monsters are created, we're just going to position them based on how many there are and how many groups there are. This line hasn't changed, neither is this one. So this bit here is going to determine whether we draw an arrow above the monster or not. Target Y is going to be where the arrow is going to be drawn from, obviously. And what this line is going to do, so DS list find index is going to search DS targets to see whether it contains the ID of this particular monster. If it does find this ID, it would return a position that's going to be a number greater than -1, like 0, 1, 2, 3. If it doesn't find the ID at all, then it's going to be a -1. So basically, any hero or monster that isn't a target would return -1 for this. So if this function doesn't return -1, then the monster is a target, and that means we're going to draw the arrow above their head. We're also going to have a new variable called choose target inside battle spawner, because we don't want to see the arrows all the time. We only want to see the arrows when the player is actually trying to choose a target. So we're only going to display that arrow when this target, when the player is trying to choose a target, basically. Next, we're just going to do something quick in the draw GUI end event for battle spawner. You don't have to do this. It's just so you can see, make sure your variables are working properly. So we're going to track the size of the lists, and we're going to track the state of option state. So this is just inside if state is ready. So now we are going to jump into the step event of OBJ battle spawner. This is where the majority of the work is going to be, and it's probably going to be the place where you're going to make a mistake if you do so. I'm hoping I don't have too many projects to fix from this one. Okay, so we have a complete overhaul of the create monster region. It's still going to be in the same place, but it has changed quite a lot. It's also got another region inside of it called workout monster coordinates, because as soon as we have created all the monsters, we're then going to position them. So we can't position them while we create them, because we don't know how many we have until we have created them. So total monster groups is going to keep track of how many groups there are. This is only for positioning. There's going to be a little space between groups. Originally, a few weeks ago, when I first started to work on the multiple monsters and heroes system, I had a targeting system that you could target single groups and all monsters, and I had a fairly complicated system of IDs within a list, and that was to try and make the actual pressing up, down, left and right as fluid as possible. But I decided, if it's a bit confusing for me, it's going to be even more confusing for you guys, so I'm just going to settle for targeting a single monster or all of them. It's easier for everyone to follow. This is just going to check to see if DS monsters exists as a list. If it doesn't, then we are going to create it. Otherwise, we are just going to clear it. Either way, we end up with a list called DS monsters, which has nothing inside of it. If you don't know, sometimes lists can just be destroyed or be lost. That's why we want to check to make sure it's there before we try and use it. This for loop is the one I was referring to from inside the create event of OBJ init. It's going to go through the whole spawn arrays of the monsters. It's going to check monster type, how many we want, and the chance of them to spawn. And it's going to create a monster for everyone that we need. So these 3 variables are just an easier to read version of the monster to spawn, the max monsters to spawn, and the chance of them to spawn. We're going to roll from between 1 to 100. If that roll is less than the chance to spawn, then we are going to have a group. However, the enemies in the group are going to be from between 1 and the max. So if the max is 3 slimes, it can be between 1 and 3. And this is going to spawn a monster for everyone that we need for that group. That's why there's a second for loop within the for loop. I think the only extra variable I have inside this is index. This is mainly going to be used, I think it's only used for letting the quest manager know what type of monster has been killed. And then every time we make a monster, we're going to add it to the monsters list. And after we have done the for loop for the group, we're going to increase the total amount of groups by 1. So this variable, and that's how we're going to know how many monster groups have been created. And second of all, for working out the monster coords, I've just got 2 variables: space between each monster and space between each group, are 64 and 20 respectively. This line just basically works out the position of the very leftmost monster, and they all get positioned based on that. Then we have a little for loop that runs through the whole size of the list of DS monsters. It grabs the ID for the position inside the list, and then just changes the position based on this little formula. Don't need this, you can just use it for testing though if you like. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize coordinates and create monster. This hasn't changed. This next one, we've got a few things. So again, we're going to clear or create targets and actors, just the same as the previous one. Monsters, check it exists. If it doesn't, create it, otherwise clear it. And between player turn and selected option, we have these. So choose target. I've already explained what that's for. Target type, as I said, we're only going to be really using this one here. Targeting is single monster. That's all. We don't change this at all in this episode. It's just going to be a single monster. Current actor. So current actor is going to hold the ID of whichever actor. So whether it's going to be hero or monster is taking their turn. The player goes first. So we're just going to set it up by adding the hero's ID to the current actor. And total XP value, total gold value, as you saw inside the step event of monster objects, this gets increased by the respective values for whatever monster has just died. And we need to also have a default target for the player to attack, which is going to be the very first monster that was created, so the one on the very far left. I think that's pretty much it for the setup variables. So I'm just going to minimize this one now, this region, and then inside battle is in progress. We have another total overhaul, and that is for the setup next actor's turn. So here we're checking for next actor state as well as global.battle animation. If we don't do a check for the animation, that's going to cause us problems too. So make sure you have this in. We're going to clear the target list. We need to be clearing the list. Even for the monsters, when there's more heroes, they're going to pick a random target. So that's why this is important as well. If the list size of DS actors is 0, it means that either the heroes or the monsters have finished all their turns, and that means we're going to switch the player turn. If it is now the player's turn, then we are going to make the actor list just contain the one hero for now and set option state to main. That's going to allow us to choose from the different abilities like attack, spell, item, that kind of thing. Otherwise, if it's the monster's turn, we're going to use a function called DS list copy. That's basically just going to make a copy of DS monsters called DS actors. It's just going to contain all the IDs of the monsters. It's just a fast way of copying things over. And then we're going to set option state to monster's turn. Otherwise, if there are still IDs left inside DS actors, then if it's the player's turn, set option state to main. Otherwise, it's going to be monster's turn. Regardless of what happens in this, we're going to grab the new current actor, which is going to be whoever is next in DS actors. You don't need this, just for debugging purposes. And then we're going to remove this actor from the actors list, and that's going to allow the next one to be chosen next time this line comes around. This is the same as before, and now we want to have a default target. So if it's the player's turn, then the DS target list is going to contain one monster, whichever is the one on the far left. That's what they should return. Otherwise, if it's the monster's turn, then the target list is going to contain the ID of the hero. Again, it's okay just to use OBJ hero for now because there's only one hero, and we also reset choose target to false. So we're just going to be covering doing the attack function for now, just to get that in place, and because we now have a different system for targeting, we need to make some changes to the attack script. So this is how the script should now look. We're no longer going to be passing any variables into the script. It's just going to grab its own variables based on the variables inside battle spawner. So attack equals the current actor's attack value. Target is whichever is the first target in DS targets. Defense is just the target's defense. The rest of this is pretty much the same, I believe. No major changes, if any, apart from maybe setting target, defense, and attack as variables. The only reason I did that was because I wanted them to appear in a different color. It just makes it easy to read. That was the only real reason, really. And the text here, it has to be current actor.name, as you see there. So as long as you've got this, then we can go into OBJ battle spawn a step event, and we're just going to search for SCR attack, and we're going to delete the contents inside the brackets. So it should be one for the player and one for the monsters, like that, and just do a check to make sure there's no more. It should just be those two. Okay, so I have commented out these two lines and we've added these three. So basically, when the player chooses attack from the menu, he's going to set choose target to true because we want to allow him to choose his target. Selected option is going to be 0, and max options is going to be the size of the monster list because that's how many targets there are going to be, basically. Then in the done region underneath magic, we've commented out this line and replaced it with DS list size monsters is 0. set option state to battle over and victory state to player 1. I don't actually think we need this anymore. I just left it in for legacy purposes, because I'm pretty sure that the system the system that I designed only ends the battle in the step event of the monsters if they die, basically. But just in case we need it, I've just changed this into this and this into this, and commented out this, because we now run the death animation from inside the step event of the monster. And inside victory state player 1, we've replaced these 2 lines with these 2 lines, so just using our new variables, total XP value and total gold value. And because we now have an extra step between pressing attack and actually attacking the monster, we have to choose a target. We're going to have an extra little region, although I'm not going to make it a region. It's like 4 lines. So if you click on where it says option state equals battle over, just before the curly brace, it's going to show you the partner, which is this one here, and we're going to add this code. So else, if option state equals attack, so this is going to be the second button press. The first button press is going to be we choose attack, then we're going to be pressing left, right, up and down to choose a target, and the second press of OK is actually going to run the attack script, and only then do we set option state to done and choose target to false, because we don't want to see the arrow anymore. Last of all, there's actually only 2 more things to do. So we're going to ignore up and down for now. We're just going to use left and right for this episode, and all we're adding is this bit here. So if it's not an item, then after we've pressed right, change target. If choose target is true and target type equals single monster, then the new target is going to be whatever monster is in the position of selected option. So if selected option is 3, it's going to be the 4th monster, and it's the exact same code for pressing left. And last of all, inside monster's turn, just comment out the line that says monster.run attack animation equals true and replace it with current actor. And we can actually test the game now. I did give myself a couple of buffs just for testing purposes, as you'll see when we fight. So I'm going to press left and right to make sure I can choose any target, and I'll choose the second slime who dies straight away. Now I get hit by all 3 slimes, and I'm going to kill the blue slime because it did most damage. There's only 2 left. Let's finish them off. And if you spam pressing spacebar, just to make sure there's no kind of bugs like that, then you know you've got a solid system. Because I guarantee you, when a player is trying to get through a battle quickly, he's going to be spamming spacebar, especially if the enemies are easy. And that's it. You can also see we're receiving like 5 gold and 5 XP, because it's a combined total of the slimes. That was the first part of the multiple monsters and heroes. I'm gonna leave a comment below, because just to explain how much of a job that this is. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I will catch you next time. Bye for now.